Let's welcome Carl Kerby.
Well, thank you. Check, there we go. Thank you. A couple pieces to kind of reinforce what Ken was talking about. There's another article that just came out today. They found a finger in Arabia, a finger bone, a human finger bone in Arabia, and this throws everything off about what we know about human evolution now. A single finger bone. The point I like to make to folks, and this just came out, the point I like to make is how strong is your position if you find a single bone, in this case a single finger bone, and everything you've known to be fact for 150 years is no longer true. How strong is your position? You know, I just as a point that I like to make with younger generation, the mature folks that are in here, you know that that's my passion. I'm sorry, mature generation, I love you, but I want your kids and your grandkids, man, because they're the future. And Satan is coming. I got it blacked off, so that's what. Okay. Satan's going after him, so I'm going after him. So I tell everybody, it's like, you know, when Satan comes after him, he doesn't play fair. And he's a liar, and he's a father of lies. And so we've got to be able to teach them how to deal with these things, which is why we went through the Chicago Field Museum. I love this National Geographic article as well, because it reinforces another point that I make in one of my other talks. I show a video because, for those of you that don't know me, I will say things to try to tweak people, to tweak them. I mean, I like stepping on toes, just to get people to think, not to be a jerk, but to make people think. And so one of the things that I say is that, okay, think about this. There's two ways that we got everything. In the beginning, God, or in the beginning, what we're going to talk about tonight, nothing, which turned into gas, which turned into an amoeba, which turned into a worm, which turned into a fish, to turn into an amphibian, to turn into a rat, to turn into us eventually. But then you got the black man in Africa who ate fish, developed spurred brain development, got smart, moved north, and turned white. And you laugh. That's exactly what National Geographic is just saying right there. And I've got the video that says exactly that. The black man in Africa evolved from the ape-like creature, ate fish, spurred brain development, so they got smarter, then they moved north to turn white. And I tell everybody, if eating fish makes you smart, I should be dumber than a brick. Because I'm not eating fish, man. I mean, when I eat, I want to stab, cut, chew. That's the way that I want to eat. If I got a spit bone, I don't want to do it. And trust me, when your wife is Japanese, it's not good. Because she likes fish. And I'm talking to little tiny nasty smelling fish, you know what I'm saying? You're driving home, you're a block from the house, and it's like, she's cooking fish. I had to lay the law down. I am the man of the house. You are not cooking that fish in the house. I am the man. I wear the pants. She just tells me which ones to wear. You think squeezing toothpaste in the middle or the end is a big deal? Try coming home and smelling that fish. And now one more point. They got smart, so stick with me. They left the beach, moved north where it's cold. Brother, I'm telling you, that's the wrong direction. Smart people head to the beach. Y'all can keep this white stuff up here. I left here 7.5 years ago to get rid of this. I'm like, what in the world? So, well, that's the kind of stuff I do. So, tonight is a fun one. At least to me, it's a fun one, all right? We're going to take a look at two of the probably major spokesfolks in atheism today. My approach is to not put words in people's mouths. I like to take secular videos, take them, and break them down. Because then it's like, okay. And the reason I do that is very specific. It's because I am not a scientist. I am not a PhD. And so the number one attack that I will get when I go out and speak somewhere is I will get the PhDs coming up to me. What gives you the right to talk on this? You don't have a PhD. Where did you study science? And so my response is, well, I don't have a PhD. I grew up around guys with one name, Crusher, Bruiser, Mauler, Assassin. My dad was a professional wrestler, so you're right, I am not very bright. But you know what I can do? I can smell a fake and a fraud from a block away. And so I use their stuff. Here's what you're saying, your people are saying. Here's my interpretation. You tell me where I'm wrong. And that shuts that whole argument down. So that's why that's the reason that I do that, is to show their stuff. So tonight we're going to take their video and we're going to break it down. And I got a bunch of titles for this one now. I don't know which one to stick with because I just finished it up. I'm kind of thinking of calling it, Did You Hear That? I'm thinking of calling it Something from Nothing, and you think we got the problem. I'm trying to figure that out. But Lawrence Krauss and Richard Dawkins are the two atheists that we're going to deal with tonight. You're familiar, most of you are familiar with Richard Dawkins. Probably his most famous work would be The God Delusion. I put it like this. He's getting older now, but he is probably still the major face in atheism. He's still probably the granddaddy, okay? So I kind of say that he's like Gru. You know what I'm talking about? We got a lot of gray heads in here. You guys don't know who Gru is, most of you, but Gru has got his minions, okay? So I say Richard Dawkins is like Gru. And Lawrence Krauss is just like one of the minions. So to me, if you deal with the arguments that Richard Dawkins is throwing out and Lawrence Krauss is throwing out, you can deal with the minions, okay? So Lawrence Krauss wrote a book, and the title is called A Universe from Nothing: Why There is Something Rather Than Nothing. So here's another title that I've been working with. In the beginning, ... God or nothing. You fill in the blank. I mean, but something had to create the heavens and the earth. So which one created it? I mean, you fill in the blank. God versus nothing. So let's deal with it. In the beginning, God? Some of you may have heard that there's no evidence for God. I mean, anybody ever have somebody make that statement to them? Well, I'm going to show you a video. Many of you have seen it, but there's some new faces here. It's a series of videos, and there's a reason I'm showing it to you. We're going after younger generations, as I said before. They have a 2.2 second attention span. And that's reality, mature folks. When I say to you that I'm going after them, and there's a reason why, and I'm using an approach to go after them, many times the mature folks are telling me, so you're telling us we did a bad job. You know, we can't understand you. You speak too quickly. Sorry. We have a generation that has this is scientific research, 2.2 second attention span. And if you think we can go after them the way that I was taught, the way that I was raised, we're done. And so I'm going to come after them. I will never compromise the message. But the approach that I use, oh yes, I will be out there. And so I do a series of videos called Debunked. And one of the things that we debunk is we debunk the myth that there's no evidence for God. So put your seatbelt on, because we got some young folks in here, and I want to go after them for a second. Because we have two choices, in the beginning God or in the beginning nothing. So, well, there's no evidence for God? Really? Let's take a look.
Lots of people say there's no evidence for God. Well, we're going to knock that one out in three. We're just going to have to keep it simple, throw in the old 1-2 combo, get in and out real quick, and let you fine folks chat all about it. Okay, punch one I'm going to call the info uppercut. When's the last time you walked into a library and asked, hey, where are all the books that have been written by mindless products of natural laws? The librarian would probably laugh at you and tell you that no such books exist. They don't exist because they can't exist. Why not? Because first of all, it's just common sense. The words that form the message in books always originate from a person with a brain. Or to say it a bit more scientifically, the message of the book, the purpose, comes to be understood by the orderly placement of the words, design, and information. Information. Now, anytime we find info, these basic laws always apply. Number one, matter doesn't spontaneously produce information. Number two, only a mental source, intelligence, can generate new creative information. In other words, just like those books that couldn't originate without a mind, neither could life. Why not, you ask? Because we know that DNA contains information. Therefore, the laws of information science apply, which means the information in DNA couldn't have spontaneously generated, and that a mind is behind the information. Period. No exceptions. Look at it this way. The simplest life form we know of is an amoeba, and it contains as much information in its DNA as 1,000 complete sets of Encyclopedia Britannica. So, are we to believe that there's no way a message in a library book could spontaneously generate, but far more complicated messages in DNA that contain 1,000 times more information could have? Not likely. You see, when it comes to life or anything else that contains information, the laws of information science confirm the necessity of a creative mind. And guess what? In the very first book of the Bible, it just happens to mention that. In the beginning, God created. Bam. Uppercut lands on the chin. And now here comes the indefensible head blow. We'll call this the not a big bang beam swing, the KO to the claim that there's no evidence of God, the law of causality, left hook of doom. It goes like this. Everything that had a beginning had a cause. The universe had a beginning, therefore the universe had a cause. Now, either something caused the universe to come into existence, or nothing caused it. I might not be the smartest guy behind the telescope, but honest, practical, everyday thinking's going to lead me to the latter. You have to work pretty hard to conjure up a way that nothing did it. You see, it's pretty improbable, nigh impossible, to account for design, information, and cause if the universe just exploded from nothing. Smack! And while we're on the topic, where did the matter come from that exploded? Are we really to believe that there was nothing and then it exploded, and now the exploded nothing is something, and we just happen to be smart enough to discover and understand the very laws that prove the opposite? And if the general understanding of the law of cause and effect is true, how can matter come from a lesser cause like nothing? I mean, come on. I don't have a bunch of letters after my name, but even a monkey knows better. And yeah, I snuck in a couple of extra jabs in there, so sue me. Now for some parting words from our sponsor, the Bible. It tells us in Romans 1:20 that since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so they are without excuse. It also says that people actually know the truth, but they reject it, which explains why even though there's overwhelming evidence that there is a God, evidence won't convince the unwilling. Sad but true. So there you have it. With just a couple of meaningful blows, the claim that there is no evidence for God is down for the count, amigos. In other words, it's been debunked. Adios.
So, too fast. We didn't get it all. Tell you what, if I give it to you for free, would you use it? Would you share it? Would you give it to your younger generation? You got a smartphone? Anybody use a smartphone? Anybody? 2 hands. You're killing me. I know there's more than 2 people. Thank you very much. Take your smartphone out. Yes, we're not in church. It's okay. Go to your app store and type in reasons, plural. Reasons for, F-O-R, hope. Reasons for hope. Download the app. It's absolutely free of charge. I am not trying to sell you anything. And when you download it and get it on your smart device, it'll have a tab at the bottom that says more. You hit that more, it'll take you to the next page. As you scroll down, it will say debunked. All 7 debunks that we have produced are on there, free of charge for you to use, for you to share. I want you to have them. And I want you to pray for us, because starting next month, I've now got 3 more debunks funded, and we're going to try and produce 1 debunked a month. And we want to continue this. So I would ask you to pray that we would be able to get the funding to do that. Maybe you'd like to help us to produce one. We need to fund each one of them. So if you want to help us fund a debunked, get with me. I can give you, I've got over 100 questions right now. And the questions that we're going after are not the questions that I make up. The questions are, when I go to a camp and I deal with younger generation, day 1, I hand out index cards. What are the questions that are keeping you from selling out for the Lord Jesus Christ? Write it down on the index card, turn it in. And that's what we deal with the whole rest of the camp. I don't go in there with a preconceived idea and this, well, today we're going to talk about where did Cain get his wife. Kids don't ask where did Cain get his wife because they are biblically illiterate and they don't know who Cain is. Now they do ask, if we go back to 1 man and 1 woman, what about incest? So we will deal with that. But I've got over 100 questions right now that we're going to go after. Pray for us, but it's free. So God versus, nothing. Now, I'm not smart, I've already told you that, so maybe I need to just understand terms. And so let's define nothing. And because maybe I don't understand nothing, okay? So I'm going to bring a smart guy in. I'm going to bring in a astrophysicist. How's that? Let's let him define nothing.
Floyd doesn't believe he can get his taxes done for nothing. So we brought in Dr. Michio Kaku to explain exactly what we mean by nothing.
Nothing is the absence of something. 0 is absolutely nothing.
So it costs nothing.
Well, it costs you 0, which is nothing.
Nothing.
Are we in agreement now? Do we now know what nothing is? I love this quote. It doesn't take a genius to do your taxes. May I? May I? Put a twist on that. It doesn't take a genius to know that you can't get something from nothing. All right? I'm just saying. But let's deal with it because this is the big claim. So Michio Kaku tells us that nothing is the absence of something. So now let's jump into this video with Richard Dawkins And Lawrence Krauss, they go on a Love Fest tour, man, and they're in big arenas and they're filling this place up and they're talking and you can see all the people in the audience. Ooh, it's Richard. I'm telling you, man. And then listen carefully because we're going to break it down. So, did you hear that? That's the kind of stuff we're going to ask.
In the context of evolution, what something from nothing means to you?
Charles Darwin solved one of the greatest riddles that the human mind has ever solved, which is how you get something from nothing, in the sense of how you get the immense complexity and diversity and beauty and elegance of life, and perhaps above all, how you get the powerful illusion of design that life shows, starting not quite from nothing, but starting from extreme simplicity.
I'm not putting words in their mouth. All right. So, by the way, notice something interesting here. Notice how he couches the question. In the context of evolution, Satan plays with words. The minute you start dealing with something and they start playing with words, what does "is" mean? Seriously? Come on. You know that you're dealing with Satan. Because Jesus is very blunt and very straightforward. Let your yes be, yes, and your no. Guys, when I start getting in the context of, look, cut to the chase. How do you get something from nothing? Forget about context. I don't care what context you put it in. How do you get something from nothing? And then he goes on and he says this, what does something from nothing mean to you? It doesn't, who cares what it means to somebody? How do you get it? And then he goes, mic drop time. Charles Darwin showed how you get something from nothing. You see, what I find when I get into these conversations with the really smart guys, and I'm not the PhD, they have their mic drop moments. Boom. Charles Darwin, boom, walk away, we're done. It's almost as if, oh, he dropped Charles Darwin, we got to walk away. Ooh, we lost. Pick the mic up, dude, we're still talking here. Oh, the laws of quantum theory, laws of quantum mechanics, the laws of gravity, boom. Pick the mic up. Just because you dropped the Charles Darwin bomb, that doesn't mean anything, because let's be honest. Did you hear that? What did Charles Darwin discover?
Birds. Difference among the birds. Microevolution. Micro.
So what did Charles Darwin discover?
Birds that eat different food depending where they live.
He found birds, okay? And the bird's beak would change depending on what happens in the climate. You could get a population of little beak birds that would increase when you got more flowers or decrease when you got fewer flowers. That's not something from nothing. I mean, don't trust me. Let me let a non-Christian talk to you here for a second. The theory of evolution, only creationists call it Darwin's theory, deals with changes in populations. That's not nothing. That's not nothing. Goes on to say this. It says, given a starting population, changes will occur. Do we agree with that? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's not nothing. And it goes on. He says this, that starting populations is an objective fact. We see it in the fossil record. Amen. Amen. That's why I love talking about fossils. That's why I love taking people to the Chicago Field Museum, to the Smithsonian, so you can see what they actually have and see what they don't have. Because you see, it is an objective fact that they find fossils. But you know what is not an objective fact? They don't find all the stuff that ties it all together, according to what they believe. Okay? So here he continues on. He says, the theory of evolution says that says nothing at all about where that population come from. Oh, it could be spontaneous generation, aliens, deity. It really doesn't matter. Many of the same. It's a completely separate theory. Hold up. So why you dropping the Charles Darwin bomb here? Because according to you guys, he has nothing to do with where it all came from. How it changed, yes, but not where it came from. What was the name of the book? A Universe from... Okay, remember that. Powerful illusion of design that life shows. Oh, did you hear that? Why's he got to throw that out there? Because everywhere you look, you see evidence for design. And design requires a designer. Dan, I need to get that quote from you because I want to put that in here that Dan just found. Dan was on the Chicago Field Museum stuff we did yesterday. He found like the most amazing quote. I've been saying this because you guys are going to understand me. You're mature. There's the old saying, remember, that God is in the detail, or the devil is in the detail? God is in the detail. Because the further down you go, the further down you look at anything that God created, you take an electron microscope and you dig down and look and look and look, the more amazing it becomes. Anything that man made, you look at it under an electron microscope, it looks like junk. Do you have the quote there, Dan? I do. Yeah, take a listen to this quote that Dan found.
This is from the Field Museum in the Snake exhibit by the Python skeleton. And the quote was Roman Vizniak, and I just guess I'm saying that right. Anyway, here's the quote. Everything made by human hands looks terrible under magnification, crude, rough, and unsymmetrical. But in nature, every bit of life is lovely. And the more magnification we use, the more details are brought out, perfectly formed, with like endless sets of boxes within boxes.
God is in the detail. And they see it, but they can't see it because the scales are over their eyes. This isn't an evidence problem, guys. It's a spiritual problem, and you're going to see that very clearly in this video. And, starting not quite from nothing, did you hear that? What was the name of the book again? A Universe from? Nothing. Not quite nothing? Do you think anybody at this time like, oh, hold up. We just came here, we bought your book, and we paid ticket price to come in and hear you tell us how we got something from nothing, and now the first sentence out of your mouth is telling me that it didn't come from nothing? It came from not quite nothing? Nobody questioned this, guys. This is not an evidence problem. This is a spiritual problem. And then he goes on, he said this, but starting from extreme simplicity, can somebody help me please? Explain extreme simplicity to me because I am not that bright. You start with extreme simplicity. What is extreme simplicity? Something extremely simple. What is that? Hang on. Hang on, watch.
So, getting something from nothing, Charles Darwin gives us all confidence. Charles Darwin showed that what must have seemed the most difficult problem of getting something from nothing was soluble. He solved it, and his successors have been simply fleshing out his explanation ever since. But after Darwin, it's no longer possible for anybody, any reasonable person to say, oh, I simply can't believe you could get something so complicated as that.
Okay, let's break this down. Keep me straight here. Darwin showed it was possible to get something from nothing. How?
He didn't say how.
Not a thing. Not a thing to do with that. So pick the mic up. Pick it up. We're still talking here. All right? Don't let them do this to you, young generation. I am not encouraging you to be belligerent, ignorant jerks. I am not encouraging you to do that. I'm encouraging you to speak the truth, to speak it in love, and to ask very good questions. Sir, what did Charles Darwin show? He showed that you start with starting populations, you can get changes within the population. That is not something from nothing. What you're saying is not being backed up by the claims that are made. And then he goes on, he said this, you're not reasonable if you don't believe in something from nothing. Why? Why? You just got done telling me that it did not quite from nothing, so why is it therefore not reasonable to question you and say, what was it that it came from? Because by your own admittance, it's not nothing. Intimidation is one of the major tools that Satan will use, especially with this younger generation. I can tell you story after story after story with this younger generation now, guys. The colleges are getting very aggressive. The professors are getting very aggressive going after this younger generation. Very aggressive. And I can share stories with you because it breaks my heart. I get these young folks coming up and talking to me all the time after camps and everything, what they're running through in colleges. But you know what? If you teach a generation to have a good, solid foundation, ask good questions, they can have an impact because their peers are watching them. And when they stand up and ask solid questions, sir, you just got done telling us that it's not something from nothing, so why is it irrational to ask you what it was? Makes people think.
But I think you're not being fair to Darwin. I think in a sense it's something from nothing. I mean, completely nothing. In the sense that every time take humans, we weren't around perhaps more than maybe 5 to 10 million years ago. And so, in a sense, every time a new species is created, it's something from nothing.
Okay. So I love this. Lawrence Krauss challenges him. You're not being fair to Darwin. It is something from nothing, completely nothing. Because 5 to 10 million years ago, there weren't any humans. Now there's humans. So every time you get a new species, it's created something from nothing. Did you hear that? How are you going to respond to that?
He said something true. We weren't here 5 million years ago.
Very true. But how are you going to respond to this claim that it is something from nothing? Every time you get a new species, it's something from nothing.
But I thought it came from some,
What's that?
I thought it came from the zoo. Well, from the animal. With the whole theory of evolution is this species developed from this species, which developed from this species. So
Remember at the very beginning, it deals with changes in populations. That's not nothing. So you had something. Even if I were to give you your story, you didn't get humans from nothing. You got humans from some predecessor. Watch. This is. If I were smart enough, I would answer like this. I'm going to let Richard Dawkins. He can say big words. I can't. I wish I could answer like this.
Well, it's not from nothing because it's from an antecedent species, and even the evolutionary process, the process that Darwin discovered, didn't start from nothing. It had to start from a reasonably complicated chemical beginning, which was the first self-replicating molecule. You can't, I mean, what is that you can't get going until you have genetics, and so you've got to have genetics. And that's not a trivial problem, and it's a problem that actually hasn't yet been solved.
Do you think anybody was, we came here to hear how you got something from nothing. We just bought your $30 book on a universe from nothing. And everything that you're saying so far is contradicting that. Dawkins wrote the foreword to the book. Well, it's not from nothing because it's from an antecedent species. See, I wouldn't even know what that word was unless I'd watched this thing like 20 times. Did you hear that? What's that mean? That it came from something. But what's nothing mean? Nothing is the absence of something. Antecedent species is something, so doesn't work. Goes on, he says this. It had to start from, well, a reasonably complicated chemical beginning. Did you hear that? Where'd the chemicals come from? But even more, what did he say to begin with? Extreme simplicity just turned into a reasonably complicated chemical beginning. This is called talking out of both sides of your mouth. And this is what Satan does. And I think that we need to hold people accountable for this type of a thing. People should hold me accountable. If I'm up here saying one thing and then I'm tap dancing off in another area and I'm contradicting myself, you should hold me accountable as well. And then he goes, you can't get going until you have genetics. Anybody in here study genetics? Anybody? It's really extreme simplicity, right? You kidding me? I mean, I'm like, hold up. Extreme simplicity just turned into reasonably complicated. Now we're talking genetics. By the way, in order to have genetics, you have to have something. DNA. You have to have something. So, and then he goes on and he says this. Started from a self-replicating molecule. Think about this. Do you think a self-replicating molecule is extreme simplicity? Watch this. I found this article, non-Christian source, Short, Sharp Science. Biologists create self-replicating RNA molecule. Boom, mic drop. Go home, Carl. We now have a self-replicating molecule. See how easy it is just from that headline, how would you respond? Younger generation, watch these things. How would you respond? They just proved that we can get life from nothing because we now have a self-replicating molecule.
Where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? It must have been
Yeah?
put it together.
Do you see a key word up there?
Created.
Did the biologist use his intelligence and design it?
Exactly. Exactly. A biologist created. He used his intelligence, he used resources. Whoops. He didn't use nothing. Okay? There we go. Sorry. He didn't use nothing. He started with something to create that self-replicating molecule, but it gets even better because now watch this. Let's start reading the actual article. And watch this. It doesn't have a very sexy name, but TC19Z synthesized in a lab in Cambridge, UK could be. What's the headline say? Biologists create self-replicating molecule. That's stated as a fact. The article is not written as a fact. The article is written as it could be a version of one of the first enzymes that ever. Deception. That's Satan. R18, which can only copy RNA segments up to 14 letters long and only works on certain sequences. It's like a word processor that can copy and paste turnip, but not Swede. And this is how we were supposed to get life? I got a word processor that can copy turnip, but it can't copy Swede. Sir.
You notice they say RNA?
Yeah.
RNA is carried in DNA. They didn't say they created a DNA molecule. RNA is the message carrying piece of DNA.
Yep. And you had to have something to even get that.
Yeah. So they kind of went to step 2 without step 1.
Exactly. Because you can't get step 1. They don't even deal with step 1. So Hollinger set out to improve. What do you think it took to improve? Intelligence? Resources? It took something. And then he goes on, he says this. After several rounds of copy and variants and looking for new improvements, he's improving. As a minimum, this is intelligent design, as a minimum. Now, I personally am not a big intelligent design fan. I love their arguments, but if you don't name Jesus, you got nothing, okay? If all you do is get somebody to believe in a creator, it's like kissing your sister, okay? It's just not good, all right? If you can't name Jesus, brother, because it's at his name that every knee is going to bow and tongue is going to confess. So if you're not about him, you got nothing. He found several useful tweaks which he incorporated into his final patchwork enzyme, TC19Z. Crucially, TC19Z can copy pieces of RNA that are almost half as long, 48%, as itself. Only half of itself? And this is how we were supposed to get life? It has to be able to copy sequences as long as itself, and TC19Z is closing in on that goal. You know what I found interesting is I was reading the comments to this article, because I got frustrated with it, but if I write in and say something, oh, you're just that hick creationist, you're not very bright. I started reading the comments, and one of their own wrote this. Is this article accurately titled, Biologists Create Self-Replicating RNA Molecule, when in the penultimate, by the way, penultimate, what's that mean? Had to look it up. Next to the last. Paragraph, I'm told it can only replicate half its length. Isn't that a bit like saying, mechanic builds self-assembling car in Australia and then finding only half of it is being built when I get there? I could have saved my ticket money for when it could fully build. I was really annoyed. Why did I have to almost finish the article before I knew the title was wrong? How can I trust your titles ever again, new scientist? You can't. You can't. So extreme simplicity? A self-replicating molecule? No. No, it's not. Life must have begun with a simple molecule that could reproduce itself, and now we think we can know how to make one? Why must it have? Only if you have excluded the fact that there's a God that created the way that he said that he did. And now we think we know how to make one? If you know how to make it, it's not happening by itself. Intelligence is involved, something is involved. I found this, this was really interesting. Cover of New Scientist. Imagination. Why we spend so much time exploring realities that don't exist. You know why? You have to get rid of God. And there's only one way to get rid of God. And that's to bring in something like this. Naturalistic processes. It could just happen. Guys, this is not an evidence battle. This is a spiritual battle. Then he said this. But starting from extreme simplicity, if a self-replicating molecule is extreme simplicity, why can't we make one? We can't even make one. Heard more.
Well, in fact, actually, that's kind of interesting, because it's true that many people think that evolution has to do with the origin of life, but it's really the origin of the diversity of life.
That's true. That's true. All right? But isn't that interesting? Evolution doesn't deal with the origin of life. You know why it doesn't deal with the origin of life? I'm going to show you an old clip. You've seen it before, but it's worth burying through again. Remember Expelled? He did us such a favor. I mean, Ben Stein did us such a favor. This is why they don't deal with the origin of life, because when they do, it doesn't come out very well.
How did we get from an inorganic world to the world of the cell?
Well, one popular theory is that it might have started off on the backs of crystals.
By the way, that's not nothing. That's something.
Molecules piggybacked on the back of crystals forming, and that this led to more and more complex. But of course, the nice thing about crystals is every now and then you get mistakes, mutations, and that this opens the way for natural selection.
Yeah, see, that's how you get life. You get molecules, and they piggyback on the backs of crystals. And then when the crystal has a mutation, that causes the molecule to have a mutation, and that's how you get life. It's simple. I mean, come on. Don't question. Don't question. When you do.
But at one point there was not a living thing.
Yeah.
Then there was a living thing. How did that happen?
Well, this is I just told you.
This is funny, but you know what's not funny is this is exactly what's done to this younger generation. They ask a question, then the professor gets mean, nasty, condescending, and guess what happens? Christians disappear. Because, oh, my grade. I might fail this class. I got to get this grade, so I got to blend in. Man, I got to tell you, this is the thing that frustrates me the most. You know, it was so funny yesterday when we did or Saturday when we did our thing at the museum. Lena Callentine came in and she did a piece on natural selection, and she used a video clip that I incorporated into this talk, and I was like, great minds think alike. But I used it in a different context, because what I see here going on with this guy is what I see going on with many of the professors and the science guys. It's like this intimidation factor. But you know what I really see it as? This.
You ungrateful creatures think yourselves lucky that I'm giving you audience tomorrow instead of 20 years from now. Oh, the great Oz has spoken. Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken. Who are you? Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
That's exactly what I see with these guys. Got all the bells and whistles and hiding behind the curtain, man. Oh, you can't be reasonable if you question how you get something for nothing. That's the wizard, man. I'm not impressed. Cool pyrotechniques and all that stuff, cool reconstructions, but when I look at the actual evidence, I'm not impressed. That's why we go to the museum. That's why we go look at the actual evidence. That's why we teach a generation to look beyond the reconstruction and look beyond the veneer. Because when you see what they actually have, you're looking at the wizard. He's not done.
I don't see any reason why you shouldn't go from very simple to more and more complex to more and more complex.
I don't either, but I don't know how you get from mud to a living cell. That's my question.
Yes, well, I've told you.
I think it's on the
try
back
one
of
more
crystals.
time.
On the backs of crystals.
On the backs of crystals is at least one hypothesis, yes.
So that's your theory, and you think that is more likely and less far-fetched than intelligent design?
I think it is.
This is why they don't deal with the origin of life. Because they don't look very good when they do. There is no answer to the origin of life other than the fact that life created life. And that's not nothing.
Yes.
And in fact, the famous final paragraph of his book, it basically tries to state that.
Yes. No, you have to start from agenetics, and that's one of the big gaps in our knowledge at the moment. Nobody knows how that started. The laws of chemistry somehow have to give rise to a self-replicating molecule. Once you've got that, at least a sufficiently accurately self-replicating molecule, then evolution takes off.
Boom. That's it, man. You have to start with genetics, and once you get your genetics, this sounds like Barney Fife to me. You know? Well, you start with your genetics, you see, and then you get your genetics, and then the genetics turns into this self-replicating molecule, and then life just takes off. My brother, that's a lot of stuff skipping on. And, oh, by the way, the laws of chemistry gave rise to a self-replicating molecule. Boom, it's a mic drop time. Do you know the laws of chemistry? Anybody? Can you quote I know we got one guy that can quote it, but can any of you quote the laws of chemistry? I don't have a clue. Boom, laws of chemistry, walk away. Nope, pick the mic up. Because let me put it to you like this. You see these? These are law books. This is the penal law in California. And I'm going to ask you a simple question. There's the law. How many prisons did those law books create? How many jails did those law books create? Those laws don't create jack. They don't create a thing. They explain why somebody might end up in that place or how those places are to be run, but they don't create anything. Intelligence has to come along and do that. The laws of quantum mechanics, the laws of chemistry don't create. They explain. Pick it up.
And what we've learned is remarkably this question, which is, in the sense of cosmology, in my mind, the last bastion of those people who feel there must be a creator, is the fact that it is plausible, based on everything we now know, that a universe could come from nothing. Now, that doesn't mean it did come from nothing any more than Darwin's argument implied that life absolutely originated by chemistry. We don't know that yet. Similarly, we can't prove that the universe arose from nothing, but the discoveries in physics and cosmology have led us to realize it's increasingly plausible, and I find that remarkable, and we're celebrating.
By now, the audience is all gone, right? Because they came to hear how you get a universe from... And everything that we have heard has been telling us that you don't get something from nothing, that you get it from something. So they're all upset, and they're all in arms, they're throwing stuff, and they're walking out, right? No, ooh, Richard, ooh, Lawrence, love fest. It's not an evidence problem, it's a spiritual problem. People weren't challenging. We need to challenge. It is plausible that a universe could come from nothing. Can somebody please define plausible for me? I'm that guy.
Likely. Possible.
Possible, likely. I went to the dictionary. Plausible, right? Here we go. Merriam-Webster. A possibly true, believable, or realistic. Superficially fair, reasonable, or valuable, but often specious. Do you know what specious means? I looked it up. Specious, simple definition. Falsely appearing to be fair, just or right, appearing to be true, but actually false. That's exactly what we're dealing with. It looks like it could be true, but it's not. Matter of fact, it's an interesting take. There's a scripture verse that says the simplicity of Christ versus contrast with the simplicity of Christ versus the subtlety of Satan. All right? I can't remember the verse off the top of my head. Do a search on it. It's a great verse. And essentially, when you do a word search on that word subtlety for Satan, it means a specious or false knowledge, something that looks good but isn't. That's Satan. I need to pull that verse in now. It just kind of hit me. But that's exactly what we're dealing with, something that looks good but isn't. Obsolete, having deceptive, look at this, having deceptive attraction or allure. Guys, that's exactly what we're doing. This is Satan's realm right here. And he doesn't know it, but he's actually admitting it. It's plausible. I don't think you want to say that because that's not good. That doesn't mean that it did come from nothing. Did you hear that? So why are you selling the book, sir? Why are you selling the book? And then he goes on and he says this. Any more than Darwin's argument implied that life absolutely originated by chemistry. We don't know that yet. But you're not reasonable if you question that. Don't let the world set the framework for the discussion. We have every right to ask good questions. Matter of fact, we have a responsibility to ask good questions. Similarly, we can't prove that the universe arose from nothing. Okay, that's it. The last person that's been hanging on has now walked out of the room. Elvis has left the building. No, they're all there. Ooh, Richard. Guys, when I watched this hour-and-a-half thing, I was sitting there saying, how in the world could anybody do this? Sit there and watch this and not get mad because they had been duped. It's not an evidence problem, it's a spiritual problem. There's got to be evidence. I mean, come on. These are smart guys. There's got to be evidence that you can get something from nothing. And since they're not producing it, let me go to another smart guy, all right? Here's another professor, Alexander Vilenkin, Institute of Cosmology, Tufts University, Boston. Maybe he's got evidence how you get something from nothing.
Of course, if you ask, is there evidence that the universe began by this spontaneous nucleation out of nothing, I don't think we can produce any evidence for that.
Do you know what that means? They have faith. If there's no evidence for it, that means they have faith. We have faith, but so do they. We put our faith in God, they put their faith in nothing. Let's go to another smart guy. Nobel laureate. He's got to have some good evidence.
We have to wait for a non-theistic explanation. Very often you have to wait a long time. But that's what science is. Science is looking for non-theistic explanations of what we see in nature.
Did you hear that?
That's how they define science.
Exactly right. Let me give you another tool. You still got your smartphone? Pull it out. Type in your app store, 1828 dictionary. You want it. It's a great tool. 1828 dictionary, it's a free app. Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. Type in the word science in an 1828 dictionary. You know what you're going to find? They talked about God. Go to a modern day dictionary. Type in the word science. You know what you're not going to find? They've redefined the term. Took God out. Is that it? 1828?
Says the intellectual and practice activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment.
But it's gone now. It's all naturalistic processes. What gives them the right to redefine the term science? The fact that there's 400,000 churches across the nation of America, 400,000+ churches across the nation of America, and Christianity is invisible. We've got to get more visible in the culture, guys. We got to raise a generation that's willing to take a stand and ask good, honest questions. God versus nothing, it's not that hard of an argument. Now, I'm going to show you a video here. It's about 6 minutes long, maybe 7, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Because I don't think we have to be mean or nasty to deal with these issues. I think we can use humor as well. I attempt to do that, but there's guys that do it better than me, and his name is Stephen Colbert. Oh, I know. But he did a good job. Before I show that to you, let me tell you about 2 things. The materials are out there if you want some stuff. I'm not trying to be a salesperson, but it's there. But let me tell you the 2 new things that I brought with me this time. 1 month devotional. 24 videos. They're 1.5 minutes long, right at 1.5 minutes long. You watch design features on animals, 4 animals, 6 for each one. Inside the book, there's questions that you can ask off of each animal. Then the answers are in there for you as the leader. So parent, if you've got children, young children, The whole goal is to get parents, grandparents talking with their children. You watch the video, then have a 10 to 15 minute conversation with your child. So there's the full color stuff, questions, the answers are all in there. Then there's a coloring page for the young people so you can make a photocopy of that so they can be, if they're ADD like me, I got to have my hands going, brother. If somebody's talking to me and my hands aren't going, I'm not listening. And so that's a 1 month thing. All right, it's a study that I did it for my grandkids. That's why I did it. I wanted to have those conversations with my grandkids and see that. And then last time I was here, I think I did. Whose voice are we listening to? Did I do that? I didn't? Well, this is the last talk that I filmed. I just got this edited and filmed. And this is dealing with, this is a toe stepper. I don't like giving this talk, to be very honest with you, because I'm dealing with whose voice are we really allowing into us? How much time are we spending on video games? How much time are we spending on TV? How much time are we spending here? And what is the impact that those tools are having on a generation? So this is the brand new thing that I just edited. My wife's out there with that stuff. If it's a help to you, please. If not, I'm not trying to be a pushy guy in sales. I think you'll like this last video. It's pretty fun.